Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of Ecell VIT's official podcast, Ruminate. I'm your host, Himabindu, and I'm super thrilled to kick off this series with the founder of Tech Samvad and the CEO of the TBC Group, Mr. Pawas Jain. Welcome, sir.
Hi. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure interacting with everybody at VIT.
Sir, can you tell us a bit about your company?
Sure. So essentially, the TBC group started as the brand cocktail, which means the TBC. The brand cocktail was the idea was that basically we were providing a cocktail of services, and so I have a long background in media and news and technology before that with my first startup, and after that, I mean, I decided that I need to do something in content because content was my calling, and I love doing content and marketing and brand building and all of that. So I decided to create a consulting company, something bigger than just a normal digital marketing company, and more on the consulting side of it. So that is how I started TBC Consulting, with the idea of giving services to brands and startups and everything. How we were different is basically, very few marketing companies actually understand the startup ecosystem. So I had that background and knowledge of startups and technology and funding and how that entire scenario works and all of that. So we kind of work, not exclusively, I would not say exclusively, but we have a very good core competence of working with young startups. So that is how TBC Consulting started. Eventually, like 2 years back, we also started our own media platform by the name of Tech Samvad, which is essentially an OTT platform now for technology startups, students, and SMEs. So it's an exclusive OTT. If you go on Tech Samvad, you will find it, very similar to any OTT platform like Netflix or Amazon. But the content, which it's all, based on seasons and episodes and all of that, but it is exclusively for startups, entrepreneurs, and SMEs. So that's the niche that we have chosen. So that is, so when Tech Samvad was added to our company, I mean, we decided to rebrand it as the TBC Group, because we are doing multiple businesses, we are into multiple verticals, we have more businesses in the pipeline. So that is how TBC Group came into existence.
Like you said, TBC Group is like a out of all the fields you can choose
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
startup, like why did you choose digital media as your startup field? Like out of all the fields back in 2011, it was pretty nascent, it was in the mainstream, so why did you
Yeah.
choose that?
So back in 2011, yes, 10, ending of 10, 11, when I was, only 19 years old. Like most of the people who are attending this session right now. And I wanted to do something in news and, media and content. And, back then it was actually very difficult. So hardly there were a couple of platforms, like Your Story had also been just founded, and Youth Ki Awaaz was also very young. But at that time, uh, you know, being in chartered accountancy, what people used to say is ki jhola leke patrakar banne nikal gaye and stuff like that. So that was the mindset back then. And digital news and digital media in itself was very nascent. But it was, and believe me, like back then even the ecosystem was so immature, that when I started it, it was purely out of my love for doing something, love for content, love for doing my own business. I did not even know that there is a term called startup which exists. This was 10 years back. At that point, I mean, every mohalla in India did not have a startup founder. So I did not know that this is something, some fad called startup, and there is something like funding that we can raise, where somebody, some unknown person would put in money in your business and all of that. So it was actually started as a very genuine thought of doing something in content, doing something new, and creating my own business. So that was the only thought behind it, and that is how I started. I did not give it a lot of thought, because you very much, you can relate that at 19 you don't give a lot of thought on the business side of it. And I was, we were just fortunate enough to actually create something which is huge, and raise 3 rounds of fund in the next 3 years, and scale it up to 1 million page views and all of that. But obviously, I mean, I always say this to everyone, that first startup is always meant to fail and learn. So it's never meant to become a Flipkart or an Amazon. So yeah, no regrets now, but yes, we made a lot of mistakes, we faced a lot of challenges, and then finally in 2016 I sold my stake in the company, and I moved on to create TBC. Yeah.
So, like you said, you were a chartered accountant. Like you qualified as a chartered accountant in
Yes.
2014 in your first
Yes.
attempt. That's definitely not an easy task. Like seriously. So, why did you not choose chartered accountancy as your mainstream? Like why?
Okay, Bindu, interesting question, but finance remains my love. So I was not, I would not say that it was a struggle, and I was like, a lot of Indian students, I was not forced into it by my parents, luckily. But I really loved finance. So probably that is why, while running my own startup in parallel, while doing something of my own, I actually cleared it in first attempt because I really enjoyed it. But after clearing and when I actually tried practicing chartered accountancy, I realized that finance is a very traditional field to be in. And I mean, I had a great start, and I was in a very well paying consulting job initially. But then I decided that content was actually my calling. So it is just that it is one love versus another love, and I decided to choose content out of that and marketing out of that, because I wanted to work with brands. I wanted to help people create brands, and I wanted to be a part of a brand story. So I decided to. It was not like a. It was not, obviously not an overnight decision. It was a huge decision, but it was just choosing one thing against another. So that is pretty much it. Yeah.
You recently launched your first book, the first time. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So, I was going through the book trailer and I was really curious about this one particular question.
Yeah.
Will he be able to survive in the startup world without
Right.
giving up? Like, that is a kind of question every entrepreneur must have faced
Right.
at some point in their career. In fact, you yourself must have
Right.
faced a lot of times. So, can you give us a glimpse of how your character, Raga, or in fact yourself, survived in the startup world?
So I think, I mean, the question is, yes, it's a rhetorical question, but I think everybody who makes it big, or who is trying to make it big, they have to actually give up. So it is not possible to achieve any sort of success without giving up. So the entire entrepreneurial journey in itself, Bindu, is a part. It involves a lot of sacrifices and challenges and compromises. So I always tell it, wherever I interact with students and wannabe entrepreneurs, I always say this, that what you see in media is only the glamorous side of it. So you only get to know about the $1 million fundings and $1 billion valuations and acquisitions and all of that. But the real journey behind that, nobody talks about it. Like, we all know Amazon, but we would not know what failures did Jeff Bezos face before creating it, because that is not a story which is media worthy. So it's just that being successful, I mean, sacrifices and challenges and compromises and giving up is a part of being successful. So may it be sometimes as unfortunate as giving up the love and closeness of your family, to giving up your well-paying jobs or whatever. And most of the times giving up your boyfriend or girlfriend, because you can't afford to run a startup while having a girlfriend or a boyfriend. So you don't get all those what do I say, luxuries, privileges, which and at the same time, while you are doing this journey, your friends would be in good jobs, they would be getting promotions, they would be hanging out and all of that, and you will be slogging throughout the night working on your startup. So there are a lot of things that you give up, and I think it's a part of the process. And everybody I mean, I have also done my part, everybody I'm sure would have done their part. So and I think it's not a sob story to tell. It's, there are no regrets if you actually create something good and you are successful. And obviously, I mean, if you want to achieve something big, you have to give up a lot of things in life.
Like you said, people don't often talk about the darker side of entrepreneurship, but you did it in your book.
Yeah.
So, can you give us an insight about the threats one might face in this startup world?
Yeah. So interestingly, I mean, telling you very frankly, like when I first released the book, and a lot of investors and startup ecosystem and startup founders read it, their first response was that it is their own story, it is relatable. And that exactly, and what we were talking in the previous question is, it's exactly that. We all know investors and startup founders, we keep them on a pedestal that they're successful, but nobody talks about the dark side of the story. So that is why I created, and I have written it in the book blurb also, that it's a tell all tale. So I have kept no inhibitions. I mean, I might have made a certain enemies in my startup ecosystem as well, but I have gone all I would say I have gone all bland when I talk about the startup ecosystem in the book, and it talks about the darker side of the story because as I said, there is nothing rosy on in the journey, and also there is no fixed definition of success. So I would not say I'm successful right now. I mean, probably a person who is 10 times more successful than me might also not feel that they are successful. So it's all relative. It's just about, I would really tell you that it's just about finding contentment and happiness. So every morning when I wake up, I look forward to the day because I love what I do, and I think that is all that you need. So there is a lot of threats when you enter startup ecosystem. It's a very very difficult journey, and I repeatedly say it. I have written it in my book that entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey. So if you talk about the threat and the darker side of entrepreneurship, the biggest darker side I would say that is that it is a lonely journey. You're always alone. And one very ignored and unfortunately not talked about topic in India is the mental health of startup founders and entrepreneurs. So fortunately we have started talking about mental health in general. It's not a taboo, but specifically for entrepreneurs we don't pay a lot of attention to it. But those are the actual challenges that you face. It's not about your sales going down or not finding the right client or not finding funding. That is all part of business, but the real challenge and the dark side is the mental health, the loneliness that you face. So the only threat to be entering becoming an entrepreneur is to cope up with all of that, and the only way to fight it is to have a lot of grit and perseverance, because the initial years are going to be the worst years of your life, but after that you will be the happiest person knowing that you do what you love. So it's just about going through that journey and being able to go through that journey and not giving up.
So as you said, the success rate of a startup is pretty low.
Yeah.
Like, and you were talking about mental health. So how did you cope with that kind of pressure at such a young age? Like you were my age
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
started. So how did you cope with
Yeah.
that?
So I would tell you. So the coping up, as I said, I mean, coping up all depends on the grit and the perseverance that you have. So if you are, I would say hell bent upon, creating something of your own. So I'll tell you more interesting story than just the first, startup, first challenges in the first startup. So actually, more interesting part is that even when the first startup finally did not work out, like we saw a lot of success, we saw 1 million page views, and we saw a lot of brands wanted to work with us. We were connected and doing events in all IITs, IIMs, NITs, all of them, and it was a huge platform. And we had raised 3 rounds of funds, but it finally, we had to shut it down. I moved on. I sold my stake in the company, and the best story was, after that also when I decided to start again, and when I started TBC. So that is where I would rather talk about mental health, because once you know that this is what you want to do for life, that you want to do something of your own, is when you will be able to face any sort of challenge. So मतलब ऐसा होता है कि whenever somebody says that they want to do it because they're not liking their job, or they want to start up because they are not happy at their home, and they want to just leave a tier 2 city and go to Delhi and Bangalore or stuff like that. So to them I always say that unless and until you have the capability of living a very hard life every day for the first couple of years, don't start up, because it is not something that you do to get a change from your job. It is something that needs extreme perseverance, so and patience. So and obviously there would be failures. So your first startup might fail, your second startup might fail, and even then if you want to do something of your own, you will be able to find success. So if you have that sort of patience and that sort of courage, then you will be able to fight the challenges and the mental health and all of that. So that is actually the answer of your question, that when I faced all those challenges, and my first startup closed down, and I actually did a job in for 2 months, and in those 2 months I realized that this is never going to work out, because this is not me. So when you have that sort of feeling about doing something of your own, you will be able to face all these challenges very easily.
Like I follow you on Twitter, sir. So there's this one particular tweet that you tweeted on December of 2020. You said
Yeah.
entrepreneurship is exaggerated. So can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So, yeah, actually, unfortunately, I'm not very active on Twitter in last couple of months.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
more into LinkedIn now. But yeah, so I think the reason behind that is, I'll be very honest, because so as I said, like, media has always glamorized startups and founders and all of that, but entrepreneurship in general is exaggerated because it's like it's basically a business. So कर आप actually धंधा ही रहे हो, you are just glorifying it, and you're raising funds and doing all of that. Like, there are big companies, $1 billion companies, who do not even have a revenue model, which is why I think that it's exaggerated. And this comes probably from my own business experiences and a lot of that. But I feel that we glamorize and put entrepreneurs and startup founders on a pedestal. But as I said, a person who is in a 9 to 5 job has their own struggles. A person who is in a family business, a legacy business, has their own challenges. I work and consult a lot of family businesses, and their current generations have their own issues. So it's just that we are glamorizing, covering, and putting startup founders on a pedestal. But the reality is that we all have our own challenges. A student like you would have your own challenges, an entrepreneur like me would have my own challenges, and there's nothing as such to glamorize. So what I'm saying is, a founder who has probably raised $1 million is doing his own business, and a traditional businessman who is probably working in a city like Lucknow, Chandigarh, Bareilly, they are doing their own business and facing their own challenges. So basically, there's nothing to exaggerate and glamorize. It's a way of doing business, and that's all that it is. Yeah.
So you were talking about courage, like how one needs courage to survive and cope up with the pressure. So, like, how do you feel about taking such high risk and then striving for success, like doing it in the startup world?
So I think, as I said, risk taking is a part of any business. And again, I'm not saying that it's only for startup founders. Obviously, I would definitely mention that when you are a first generation entrepreneur and you don't have a family business to rely on or something like that, probably your risks are a lot bigger. So that is definitely there. But I think, again, as you said, when it comes to, when you have the courage and you have the passion of doing something of your own. And again, as I said, it's not, your startup cannot be an excuse to run away from something. So startup is, you do it because you have a passion for it. You want to do something of your own, create something of your own that you really love, and you want to wake up every morning, you want to work on your Sundays, you want to kill your weekends, you want to give up partying for the first couple of years. If you have that sort of grit, then I think you are ready to take any sort of risk. So, and the risk is, see, risk is there, as I said, again, it's exaggerated because risk is there in everything. A person who gives up their comfort of their home and goes out to do jobs, and people who go out of the country to do jobs and earn a living for themselves, everybody takes some sort of risk. But it's just that, yes, obviously startup founders have bigger risks, but they need a bigger courage to take those risks head on. Yeah.
So, what do you think are the key factors to build a successful startup?
So I think, as I said, as a very solid business model, because lately in the last 1 2 years, in fact, I have realized I interact with a lot of startups. I hear a lot of startup pitches. I personally invest in mentor startups. But one problem that I find is, because we have made, I would not name, but we have made certain companies heroes, and they don't have a proper business model. Is how people are now perceiving startups. So this is one thing definitely that a successful startup needs, that they need to have a solid business model. And while I will not name the other ones, but I would definitely love to name companies who have grown big and have solid business models, like Zerodha. If you have heard of it, like, they are a bootstrapped company, and they have built a solid business model, and first generation entrepreneurs who have become a unicorn. So that's the sort of business model. Zomato, in fact, I mean, it might be in losses and all of that, but they have a solid business model. So companies, there are lots of companies who say that they'll raise funds, they'll do marketing, collect user data, and then they don't have a business model, and then eventually they'll sell that data. But that's not a business model. So one thing for sure is that you need to have a very solid business model if you want to create a business that can last legacies. Second thing, I think, that every startup needs for success is an organizational structure. So what has happened, as I said, I consult a lot of startups, and what has happened is that we have tried making you know uh, unmanaged working cool. Like, one startup founder, he's doing everything, and we have sort of made that cool, that beanbag setup and all of that. It's good to look at, but then you need a proper organizational business structure. You need to have specialized people to do their jobs. And obviously, initial months when you are tight on budgets, you do everything. So I have done everything in my office, even sometimes making tea for everybody. So that's okay, but you need an organizational structure where your clients know who to talk to when there's a problem, your customers know where to go when there is a problem. So that is very important to create a successful company in the long run. Otherwise there will be a lot of challenges. And I would say the third thing that you need for a successful startup is, as I said, I would just repeat it, that a lot of patience as a startup founder. If you are in a rush, if you want success very fast, and if you think that you will start a company, you will raise funds in 6 months and you will be successful, that's not going to happen. Even if you do raise funds, that's not going to happen. That's the point.
Basically, prioritizing long-term
Exactly.
goals.
Exactly. Absolutely. You are correct. So the essential summary is that you need to prioritize long term, and long term. I would rather put it even more interestingly, that start a business from a perspective that you have to create a legacy business, not a business that you can just raise funds and sell off in 2 years. So if you want to create a legacy business, then you need to think long term.
So we're talking about your company. So can you tell us one of your most successful marketing strategies so far?
So, I mean, we are essentially a marketing company. So, without any modesty, I would say there have been a lot of them. So, we try to, in fact, every month we aim to, create one campaign that goes viral and create something for our clients that is very successful. One interesting campaign that we did last Diwali for Jindal Steel. So, Jindal Steel is one of the legacy steel companies. Everybody knows Jindal family and the Tata family. Tata Steel, Jindal Steel are the biggest steel companies, and Jindal Steel is our client. So we created an entire video campaign. Video is the next big thing on media. Everybody, all you guys, you students use it much more than me. So that videos are the biggest thing now. So we created a beautiful video campaign, and we actually for me, a successful marketing campaign is where you are able to generate business out of it. So virality also should generate some business. If Rasode Mein Kaun Tha can go viral, then Yashraj Mukhate, the creator of that song, should create business out of it, which he did. So that's a successful campaign. So yeah, from that Diwali campaign of Jindal Steels, we were able to generate 5x of sales than what we had expected. And it was a video emotional campaign. We decided to go emotional, and we created, because it was a post COVID Diwali at that point of time last year, and we decided to create something like you can finally meet your loved ones again, and Diwali is a great way of doing that. So something like that, and it went really well. So I think in the recent times, that was one of the successful campaigns that we did.
So this pandemic last year, this pandemic had a huge blow on many companies out there. So what has been your experience in this pandemic the past 1 year?
So I think I'll be very honest, and I would take this opportunity. Right now, we are all in a good space, so I would take this opportunity to be optimistic, and I would really, with the experience of having worked with so many brands in this period, I would say that it was very unfortunate for a lot of people, no doubt about that. We lost everybody. We, all of us, lost somebody we know, and there was a lot of hard times that we faced. But if I talk business wise, to be very honest, it had its own opportunities as well. So as I said, I would be optimistic that a lot of, in fact, we started getting a lot of requests from extremely traditional setups, like 40-year-old businesses who have been working as factories, who now want to go digital. So they want to completely transform their business, implement softwares to do work from home, and digitally market also, and everything. So I think it has this, apart from all the challenges, I can go into the sad story of the pandemic and the challenges, but I would rather focus on the opportunities, and all you guys, in fact, everybody who will be listening to, for them as well. Like, there have been immense opportunities that this period has brought. So there are new business avenues that have opened up. There is a huge scope in digital. The biggest advantage and the opportunity that I have seen is that sitting in any city in the world, you can work anywhere in the world. So it has extremely entirely gone borderless. I personally know of people who are sitting in Dharamshala in Himachal Pradesh and working as freelancers in Israel and Germany, and working with companies of Germany and Israel. So I mean, there are brilliant stories like that have come out, and I think it should be taken as an opportunity if you are trying to do something new. If you want to learn new skills, I mean, you guys, I am sure you guys would also be at home right now. I don't know, but it's a great time to learn new skills and digitally equip yourself for the future. So I think it has its own opportunities.
So in you had like a 10-year journey, incredible 10-year journey. So you must have had your share of ups and downs in this journey. So can you tell us one important lesson that you learned in this entire journey?
So one important lesson, see, I have learned is, and it would be just because there are a lot of lessons that I've learned in the last 10 years, but one important lesson probably for students would be that, and this is completely a personal opinion. I mean, you guys can think differently, but I think, a degree and education is extremely important, because I get this question so many times that we want to drop out of our degree and create a startup. But what I have learned in my 10 years is that at any point of time when it was a low period, or as you said, there were a lot of downs as well, I always had the backing of a degree to back me up. So ऐसा कभी नहीं था कि मतलब if everything goes north, if everything goes bad, I mean, we at least be able to find a job based on the degree that I have. So it's not a backup plan, I would say. It's not a plan B at all. I was very much into the company, and I wanted to create something of my own, as I told you. But it is always you actually, there are a lot of people who depend on you, so you can't be selfish and think ki, I don't. I'll survive in whatever I have, and I want to do a startup and all of that. So I think education in itself, and even I would take it even broadly, and not just a degree, but skills in itself is a very important thing to have. And I always thought after my chartered accountancy, interestingly, that I'll never pick up a book and never study again in life. I was so done with studying. But whatever field you might be in, and I'm talking about my own field in marketing, I literally have to read and learn every day. I learn from younger interns and kids in my company who are 20, 21 years old, because they know social media more than me, and that's a fact. And I have to read so much every day. Every day there is something new happening in the digital space. LinkedIn is introducing new features, some new technology features in Facebook advertising and all of that, and you have to keep updated. So always keep updating your skills. I think that is the biggest learning that I ever had, because that has what kept me relevant, that helped me scale my business, and it always helps you one way or the other. So I think that is the biggest learning that I ever
Can you tell us of one most challenging part of being an entrepreneur, apart from taking risks and mental pressure? What is the one most important challenging part?
So I think the biggest challenging part is, I would, obviously we have discussed, risks and all of that, and so I would not say it again. But I would say the biggest challenging part is taking the first step of starting up, and that's the most interesting part, because taking that first step is obviously the biggest risk, and it needs the maximum courage. So that's the most challenging, but you don't reach anywhere till you start, right? So I mean, why I am saying that, I'll tell you why. Because for me, the most challenging part was to finally decide to give up my chartered accountancy job and do something of my own, and actually also tell that to my family, break that news to my family. So that is actually the most challenging part. Interesting part is to actually take the first step. So that, yes, and that's true for everybody who would experience it someday.
Like, were your family like supportive of you to quit chartered accountancy?
So interestingly, I would tell you candidly. So yes, they were largely supportive. They were like, okay, whatever you want to do, you do it on your own. But they had their own conditions, and one condition was that I can never ask for money from them again. And they said, now you're on your own. You are taking this step. You go out, do whatever you want, and earn for yourself, raise fund, whatever you want to do. So they did not have a very good understanding of how the funding scenario works. No one does. So that's okay, but they were supportive. They said that we'll always be there for you mentally, emotionally. Your home is always there for you to come back to, but never expect money from us, because now that part is done. You have become a chartered accountant. You do whatever you want to do with your life, but never expect money again from us. And I was happy with that, because at one point, you think at that point of time that all you need is emotional support of your family, and fortunately I always had that. So I was very comfortable, and then I moved to Delhi and started my company.
That's very sweet of them, and that's a very rare case. Not many parents are very supportive of our
I always
dreams.
say that, yes, definitely. So I think I in fact say this a lot, that in India it's not about spreading the startup ecosystem in tier two, tier three, tier four cities. It's more about educating teachers and parents, because if they are supportive, they give their emotional and mental support to their kids. It will mean a lot, and they will take our entire ecosystem a long way.
So you were telling about success, your definition of success. Can you give us like a more clear definition of success? Like a lot of people have their own versions and definitions of success. So what is your definition?
I think I'll be very practical, and I always believe that you should do philosophy when you have enough money to do philosophy. So philosophy only comes when you have done something for yourself and earned something for yourself. So I think, see, there is no shame in saying that success obviously comes with money, and when you have enough money to sustain yourself, grow your business, pay all your employees on time. So for example, I'll tell you about the smaller successes that you have as a part of as part of entrepreneurship. Like during the entire last 1.5 years, we never did a pay cut, we never did a layoff in our company. And in the last this wave, right, second wave was actually more deadlier, we all know that, and we faced a lot more challenges. And we did actually, we have a 2 day leave policy. We did it 5 days leave policy to for everyone to be with their family more. We never did a pay cut, we never had to, fortunately, touch wood, we never had to lay off anybody. So those are the smaller successes, but it feels really big when you are an entrepreneur, that you are able to do something like this, when you see all around that even the bigger companies are laying off. But obviously they are 10,000 people company, we are a 60 people company, but even then it feels like a success. So we did all of that. We and we never almost 70% of our team got COVID during that period, and we never actually made cut any medical leaves or anything. So it was something that which brings you all together more, and feel makes you feel more attached. So those are the kind of successes you get as an entrepreneur, because as I said, monetarily there is no amount that can give you success. Obviously it is a very happy space that you are able to sustain yourself and do well for yourself. And I think another thing that is more on the philosophical side, as I said, would be that it is when, as I said in the beginning, success is when you actually wake up every day looking forward to the day. And that is, I would say, that is success as well as contentment. So when you are content in doing what you are doing, if you are happy in doing what you are doing, I think that is half success achieved. That is, if you don't have to sob every evening that it was a bad day, and there are bad days, there are good days, but if you still look forward to the next day, I think that is half success achieved. Yeah.
Very true, so very true. Uh, so it's very nice of you like taking social responsibilities. Like I have followed you on different platforms and I've seen the work you have done in this pandemic. So that's very nice of you, sir. You have reached a particular stage in your life, and people see you as a successful person. So but you yourself have a plan, a roadmap for the next 5 years. So where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Like you reached a certain stage, so what exactly do you want to do in the next 5 years? Where do you see?
So, I mean, obviously, we have a lot of 5 years plan, and all of that, a vision for myself, my company, and one of the vision is that this year, at least in the next 2 years, we are looking at, I mean, growing internationally. That is one. We have already started working in Nepal and London as well. So we are looking at expanding internationally. Another vision that is the longer term, as you said, I mean, where do we see ourselves in the next 5 years, is to grow as a more end-to-end consulting company. So we are trying to branch out in more consulting areas rather than just marketing. That is a vision that I have had since I started the company, and now I see that in the next 5 years, for I mean, hopefully we'll be able to achieve it. So I mean, if I have to give you an example to make, I mean, to clarify that, like, we don't want to be somebody like an Ogilvy or a DDB Mudra in marketing. We, in fact, would like to be more like a Deloitte or KPMG of consulting. So it's more about, branching out and doing more consulting work. We are already expanding into startup consulting. So we are going to consult startups officially on fundraise and, pitch decks and all of that, investor introductions, term sheets, and all of that. So we are right now, I mean, in the last 3 years, 4 years, we have been very much focused on marketing and advertising. We have that wing very settled. We have a stream of revenue that's very regular. We are working with more than 50 clients. So now we want to branch out to more consulting areas and grow more as an overall consulting company. overall end-to-end consulting company. That's the vision in the next 5 years that we have to achieve.
So, lastly, what message would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs and the potential future entrepreneurs watching this video?
So okay, so I'll keep it very practical and very realistic. So I would just say that don't just jump the wagon when you want to do an entrepreneurship. When you want to get into entrepreneurship, I mean, take a very calculated risk. I mean, entrepreneurship is all about calculated risks. It's not impulse. I mean, I can be very passionate about my idea, but it might not be a good idea at all, and you have to realize it. So and believe me, like when I started working on my company TBC after making my mistakes in my first startup, I actually did a SWOT analysis, the strength, weakness, opportunity, threat analysis of this company, of myself and my company, that where would I stand if I do this. And that sort of calculated risks you need to take in life. Because to be very honest, it's a very serious thing. It's a very serious thing to get into. It's not all glamour as they show in media. So it has to be a very, very calculated risk. You have to think about everybody who's connected to you, who is dependent on you or whatever. So that would be my one message. Second message is, obviously, if you have decided to do it, then have a lot of patience and perseverance. Like, don't just give up. Don't create a company to sell off. Don't create a company to raise funds. Create a company with the vision that you will never raise funds and you will never get funds. Like, think negative, think that you will never be able to raise funding from an investor. And if you can still survive and create a business, then you will be successful. So because this mindset that you are doing a business to raise funding, that in itself is flawed. So if you can survive and if you can create a business without raising funds, then obviously go ahead. So I would just say that have a lot of patience. It's a great journey. There are no regrets. It is a journey full of learning, ups, downs, and it's a part of the journey. All of it is part of the journey. But if you have the patience and the courage, the success and the achievements that you get are obviously, I think now I realize that in the last 40 minutes I would have been very negative. But I think that obviously once you do this journey and go through this journey, and I'm just talking realistically, then the achievements and the successes are very big, and it's a great journey to have. So it's just that just go out there, try your best, give it your best. If you have a great idea, definitely pursue it.
It was great talking to you, sir. It was not negative. Like, not many people talk about the realistic stuff, like practical stuff, what practically happens in an entrepreneurial world. So I'm sure all of us are taking something back from this video. Thank you
I
so
think
much, sir.
motivational talks are there. A lot of motivational talks are there, but there need to be more realistic talks. So that is just my thinking, that you need to be aware of reality, and it's not always about motivation. I think all of you are already motivated enough. You are educated students. You are already have great access to social media. So I think motivation is not the challenge. The challenge is that you need to know the realities also. So that was the only perspective. But it was great talking to you, Bindu. It was amazing.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Well, that winds up our first episode with Mr. Pawas Jain. Don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon for more such podcasts, and stay tuned for our next episode.